The 1990s felt like a total fever dream for horror fans. We moved away from the gory slashers and monsters of the 80s and into a decade obsessed with breaking the fourth wall, psychological meltdowns, and making us scared of our own home video recorders. Today, we're ranking the 10 essential masterpieces that showed 90s horror wasn't just a weird experiment. It was the most influential decade for the entire genre. This isn't just about quality, it's about impact, innovation, and how much each film changed what horror could do. Cube. We're kicking things off with the ultimate high-concept indie miracle. If you haven't seen Cube, you've missed out on the literal origin for every deadly game movie we've had over the years. This movie is a masterclass in a minimalist terror, trapping a group of strangers in a giant, shifting maze of booby-trapped rooms where one wrong step gets you, well, let's just say it's a gruesome end. The genius here is how the movie uses mathematical paranoia and psychological breaking points to build a sense of suffocating fear, proving that a single terrifying idea can hit way harder than 1,000 CGI monsters. By focusing on the cold mechanical nature of death and how fast human morality crumbles under pressure, it basically laid the groundwork for this entire escape room subgenre, paving the way for well-loved franchises like Saw. It's just a brilliant original movie that turns a simple geometric shape into a relentless, unsolvable nightmare. In the Mouth of Madness. John Carpenter's 90s run was seriously underrated. And this movie is the ultimate proof. It's a mind-melting dive into the idea that if enough people believe in a scary story, that story becomes our reality. The visual effects are wonderfully gross. To build the wall of monsters at the end of the movie, the crew created a 30-foot-long slide of animatronics that had to be moved all at once to make the horror feel organic and just irritatingly wrong. It also hits on some pretty dark ideas about the loss of objective truth and how easily a population can be manipulated into a collective breakdown. Topics that honestly feel way too relevant in today's world. Carpenter's cynical worldview turns this surreal mystery into an unbeatable centerpiece, making it the perfect pick when you want a movie that makes you question if you're the one being written into the script. Misery.
If you want more horror lore breakdowns like this, then hit subscribe. We're pushing toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and every new one genuinely helps us make more videos like this.
This is the movie that made every writer terrified of their own inbox. Misery shifted the genre away from masked monsters and into the suffocating, brightly lit reality of a crazed #1 fan. It's a flawless lesson in psychological entrapment, showing us that a simple typewriter and a sledgehammer are more than enough to paralyze an entire audience. That infamous hovering scene uses such perfectly timed sound design to create a moment so unnerving that it still makes people physically recoil 3 decades later. By ditching the supernatural, it forced us to face the fact that the most dangerous monsters don't always have claws. Sometimes they're just carrying a dinner tray with a terrifying, quiet kind of madness within them. This movie set a new bar for high tension, proving to everyone that a limited setting and incredible performances could generate more dread than your typical jump scares, while defining how we view the dark side of obsession. Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder is a total psychological gut punch that uses horror to talk about the lingering scars of war and the darkness of government experimentation. It's a puzzle that blurs the line between a conspiracy thriller and a literal descent into hell, stripping away comfort by using jarring, stop-motion style twitching to visualize the forbidden mental collapse of a dying soldier. That famous shivering headshake effect wasn't a digital trick. Director Adrian Lin had the actors shake their heads while filming at a low frame rate, creating a nauseating look that became the visual blueprint for games like Silent Hill. At the end, we got a raw, emotional ride into pure darkness, making it a beautiful, haunting film that stays in your memory long after the credits roll. Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead. Before he was winning Oscars for The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson was busy making what might be the bloodiest movie in horror history. Dead Alive is that hilarious, grotesque story about a guy trying to break free from his overbearing mom who just happens to be a zombie. The physical effects here are pure insanity, especially for the lawnmower scene where they pumped fake blood through the blades at 5 gallons per second. Remember that? Yeah, it was super gross, but absolutely awesome. Jackson used raw filmmaking energy to construct a giant puppet-sized mother, showing us that massive scale is possible through pure, unflinching resourcefulness, even on a tiny budget. The movie is a work of art that pushes every boundary of good taste with a smile and by diving into some of the most uncomfortable family dynamics ever put on film. It secures its spot as the absolute peak of splatter comedy and the total blueprint for practical effect chaos. Time for a 90s reality check. If you had to spend a night in one, are you picking a cursed VHS world or a meta slasher town? One has ghosts you can't kill, the other has killers who've actually read the script. Which is scarier? Drop your vote in the comments. Candyman. Candyman totally changed the game by taking horror out of the suburbs and dropping it into the city, using a fictional urban legend to talk about real-world neglect and the sheer power of social miss. Inspired by a real-life murder, the movie plays out like an elegant gothic tragedy that isn't afraid to explore forbidden cycles of historical violence, using a blood-soaked hook to represent a past that refuses to stay buried. Tony Todd is an absolute legend for this role. He actually let real honeybees crawl all over his face for the big scenes just to make sure the terror felt authentic. That level of commitment led to the eerie atmosphere that creates the sense of lingering ancestral dread that you feel throughout the movie. And because it tackles these heavy ideas about racial injustice that most horror movies back then wouldn't dare touch, it remains a viewing experience that is as poetic and socially sharp as it is terrifying. Ringu, also known as Ring, imagine a simple phone call becoming a literal death sentence. Ringu is the architect of the whole J-horror wave, trading those loud Hollywood bangs for a quiet, crippling fear that feels like it followed you home. It turned a cursed VHS tape into a modern urban legend, making it clear that even our everyday technology could be a vessel for an ancient, unstoppable evil. Especially Sadako, who moves with this jerky, shuddering twitch that defies human physics, looking like she's being pulled through reality by some invisible, malicious force. This movie single-handedly shattered the Western monopoly on horror and launched a global obsession with long-haired ghosts and psychological terror. And by showing us that the most terrifying enemies are the ones that are relentless and unexplained, it redefined the modern ghost story and established a chilling atmosphere that still haunts an entire fan base years after its release. The Blair Witch Project. This movie literally tricked the whole world by making everyone believe every found footage clip they saw was real. It's the ultimate lesson in less is more, proving that what we don't see is way scarier than some random guy in a rubber mask. The whole filming process was basically a psychological experiment where the directors literally left the actors in the woods with GPS coordinates and barely any food, then harassed their tent at night to keep them genuinely exhausted and cranky. I think they might have gone too far with that one. There wasn't even a formal script, just notes left in film canisters for them to find. The final result is a movie that feels like an evidence video, and by making it certain that you don't need $1 million to traumatize an entire generation. Using just some sticks and rocks, it's a must-watch for anyone who wants to see how much terror you can build with a camcorder and a simple flashlight. The Silence of the Lambs. This is the movie that really proved horror could sweep the Oscars and still have a seat at the big boys' table. It's a clinical, high-stakes thriller that dwells on the gruesome reality of cannibalism while basing its villain on the combined real-life horrors of Ed Gein and Ted Bundy. The acting is obviously next level, but the attention to detail is what makes it feel so cold. The production team actually worked with real-life FBI profilers to make sure the crime scenes looked hauntingly realistic. Anthony Hopkins even decided never to blink while on camera to make his gaze feel like a predator watching its prey. Talk about dedication. Every frame is packed with a sense of methodical evil, making sure this sophisticated, chilling masterpiece completely redefined what a serial killer movie could be. Before we hit that #1 spot, let's make a quick shout out to the movies that almost made our list. The Sixth Sense.
That's a bit.
This film turned the twist ending into a mandatory requirement for the late 90s cinema. It illustrated that supernatural horror could be a massive, quiet, and deeply emotional blockbuster without relying on a drop of blood to stay in your head. By blending a somber drama with bone-chilling ghost encounters, it expanded the genre's reach to an entirely new mainstream audience. Tremors, a legendary creature feature that served as the final glorious stand for massive physical monsters before CGI took over the industry. It's essentially Jaws in the high desert, using incredible practical effects and mechanical ambition to create a tactile high-stakes chess match played in the dirt. It remains a standard in building tension through grit and resourcefulness, making it clear that classic monster movies still had plenty of bite. Event Horizon. Basically, hell in space. This movie earned its reputation by being incredibly uncompromising with its nightmare imagery. It blended gothic occult themes with science fiction, showing that the vacuum of space could be just as vile and demonic as any haunted house. The ship's cathedral-like design and uncompromising gore pushed the boundaries of what sci-fi horror was allowed to be for years to come. Scream. What's a horror classic without the king of 90s slashers? Scream just didn't have the genre, it straight up reinvented it. By giving us characters who had actually watched horror movies, Wes Craven created a game changer that was both a hilarious satire and a genuinely scary mystery. Craven used his scrappy indie roots to keep the production fast and mean, even fighting the censors to keep the violence feeling visceral. The real magic lives in those accidental on-set moments and the intense practical way they handled the legendary blood-soaked kills, making the horror feel raw and unpredictable. It's easily one of the smartest slasher movies ever made, and it remains untouchable even to this day. By turning our own obsession with horror movie rules into the killer's actual playbook, it made the genre feel dangerously real and fun again for a whole new generation. And there you have it, proof that the 90s weren't just another chapter in horror history. They were the foundation for everything we watch today. What makes these films special isn't just the scares, it's how they completely shifted the industry's DNA. Directors were pushing boundaries with practical effects, psychological depth, and ideas that forced the world to finally take horror seriously. And honestly, that's why so many of these movies still feel fresh decades later. If you love deep dives into the films that shaped the genre, stick around. We've got a lot more history to uncover. Which 90s horror movie do you think changed the genre the most? See you in the next video.